Hello to you all. Matthew 5:14 through 16. You are the light of the world, a city set on a hill that can't be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Your light must shine before people in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. Oh, last week we talked about imitating others' faith, that we saw really strong faith and we admired them and we could see God in them. We want that for all of us, to be able to shine His light and not have any obstacles that hinder that. And this verse comes from Sermon on the Mount. And he was not just sharing this sermon with these thousands of people, just for the people, but for the disciples who were following him, and that he spent time with us as students continually, that they would see what he was all about. It was a big sermon. It took a long time, and it actually encompasses Matthew 5, Matthew chapter 6, and partway through Matthew chapter 7. And it was just really strong. And he told his disciples to tell everyone, get as many people there as they could. And they found a large area that could have thousands of people show up. And they're not certain exactly where this is. I went to Israel and got to drive around the Sea of Galilee, and starting from Capernaum. And they actually have a mount, it's called Beatitude Mount, and where some people think that it might be from there, but people don't really know. It doesn't really matter that much, but it was really interesting just to go there and to think about that there's all these people there. And Jesus starts out by talking about the Beatitudes, and we could take weeks just talking about the Beatitudes. And and then he goes into all sorts of things after these verses. But for this week's lesson, we're just talking about this little teeny portion of Sermon on the Mount. And it includes, the sermon includes accounts from the law, teaches about legalism that was going on with the Pharisees and how he was coming to change that. And, you think about what these verses mean. What's a city on a hill? So right now, try to visualize a city on a hill that you've seen. I can think of dozens of them. You can't really hide them, and especially at nighttime when you see their lights. There's no way of, hiding that city at all with the light. I have to tell you this little brief story about, I was on a book tour like 3 years ago, sharing my first book, which is Not Really a Princess, which is kind of like my story of going through some adversity and such. And I was going to I had gone to this little bit bigger of a town and I stayed there because I had several events in the area, but I had to go out to this little town like 10 miles out of this city at nighttime. It was dark. It was in the fall, and I had to be there at 7, and it was really a neat event when I finally got there, because it was a place with lots of, with apple orchards, and so they had all these cool ciders and just neat. Some with apple, some with cranberry, just like really neat. And there was another author there, and we shared a little bit about books, and it was just a really neat event. But on the way there, I'm in my rental car on highways in the dark that I don't know, and I'm winding through these mountains, and I find a little town. So I get off the road, and my GPS doesn't work any longer. And she had kind of given me some directions, and so I sort of followed that, but They were just some sketch things, I think, you know, because there was a little center part of town, and I didn't know that. And I went around, and I actually was very close to where I was supposed to end up, but it was totally dark. There weren't any street lights. My GPS didn't work. And I would stop every once in a while, and I would kind of look on my maps that it wasn't telling me where to go, but I'm a maps person, and so I don't usually get lost. I'm pretty good with directions. So I was kind of following, but it was so dark you couldn't read street signs. And they were just like little dirt roads. There'd be a street sign. And I started crying. I pulled over to the side of the road, and I was like, Lord, I don't really know where I am, but I'm going to backtrack because I saw a store a little ways away. Wasn't really sure how to get to the store, but I'm pretty directional, so I just kind of went that direction, and I did find the store. So I went in the store, figuring I could ask someone that they would know where this place was that we were meeting at. And up on the wall in the store, there was this mural of fruits and vegetables, and above it, I forget exactly, it was Tiny's. So when I was a little girl, there was a fruit stand in this town called Tiny's, and we would go in the summer on vacation with my grandparents, and my grandma's nickname was Tiny. Now she really was tiny. She was like 4'10", I don't know, and like 100 pounds. She was really tiny, my grandma Anna Mae, and she would stop there and joke with the guy because he wasn't tiny. It was, you know, he was this huge man. And anyway, I saw that, and it was like God had given me this little thing, this, you know, and I went out, and I found the place within like 2 minutes, and it was just this little blessing, but it was so dark. There were no lights to follow, no lights to illuminate anything, and I was scared. And I can't remember really being scared like that in a strange place in the dark. I can't remember that. But light, we count on the light so much for things. And if we're to be the light, others can count on us. They know that we love Christ. There's also a couple of other verses I wanted to share, you know, about illuminating the path to Him. First Peter, Peter explains things so well, and we've been in First Peter in a couple other videos. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for His own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of Him who called you out of the darkness into His marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you have received mercy. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify on the day of visitation. 1 Peter 2, 9 through 12. We can really apply that in saying, you know, if others can't see our light, they're not going to see Christ in us. And if we hide it, it says not to hide it under a basket. If we hide it, they're not going to see it. And we'll be in the dark. People will be in the dark, and they'll be scared, like I was scared. We're to lead a righteous life so that others can see Christ. We shine so others can see God, but it's God who draws people, not us. We're just being used by Him as an instrument. The rest of the Sermon on the Mount goes on and goes into details how we can glorify God. But this is really a starting place, and I just wanted you to think about, do you think that people are watching you? Do you know neighbors and friends and relatives who maybe know you're a believer, and maybe they've talked to you about certain things before, but they're still in the dark and they don't understand? I have people in my life that I know I haven't shared my faith with them. And then others where it's easier to share faith with. in a couple of weeks, in about 3 weeks, we're going to have a whole series of videos on how to share your faith. And that will be helpful, I think, with that. I think people look at everything we do. And I'm not perfect, far from it. But I know that God doesn't want me to hide away. And I know that He would have me share my faith. And I think of this video. I think of how unqualified I am to do this. And if you've been following me for weeks, you've seen different tech issues, different things where I'm not sure or I stumble along. And even my book ministry, with having 3 books out, I'm kind of astonished by that. And somehow God just keeps prodding me. Okay, I need you to share this. I need you to tell this. And He wants me to do it no matter how flawed I am. Just like, you think of His disciples. They were just ordinary people, ordinary men. And they had their flaws. They didn't always get along. And Christ had them right where He wanted them. He wanted them to keep learning. He wanted them to make sacrifices in their life for Him. And He wanted them to be light, which, they are. They end up doing all sorts of things for the early church. And I'm sure you've probably had someone say, I talked to you several years ago, and I knew you were a Christian, and I wasn't, but I've accepted Christ, and I just want you to know. I've had that happen a couple of times, and you think, I didn't even say anything to that person, but somehow they knew, and maybe it was just a little thing. So it doesn't always have to be a big thing, but we're certainly not supposed to hide our life away. And we need to intentionally go out, and we need to pray about it and go out and, glorify God in different ways so people can just see that love of Christ in us. Just like last week, we were talking about imitating people's faith. And next week, we're going to talk more about discipleship and mentoring and what that means and how we can be effective witnesses to others. We're supposed to be light to the world. And if we live our life different than others, when hard times come, or no matter what the political thing that happens or whatever, people will see our faith. And that's what shows them Christ. And so this week, my prayer for you would be that you would go out and shine your light every day. Wake up in the morning and say, okay, Lord, I want to shine my light to people around me, and help me to do that. And not every day will be perfect, and not every day will we be able to do that, but just set it as a goal, and God will honor that. And the more you're in the Word and learning who He is, the more you can share it with others. So keep in the Word, let your light shine, and I will see you next week. God bless.